Okay, so here we have an example of solving an equation with a square root in it. And so the idea is to undo the square root as soon as we can and work with the variables that are inside the square root. And so we want to do the opposite of a square root, which is squaring it. Okay? So we have to square everything on both sides. And it's essential that when we do this, we square everything by putting parentheses around it. So we square everything on the left side and we square everything on the right side. Okay. And so the square root and the square is going to cancel each other out, leaving us with 3x plus 7 on the left side of the equation. And on the right side, I'm going to expand this and write this out as x plus 1 times x plus 1. Okay. And so it's a common error just to say that it's x squared plus just to square the x and square the 1, but because we have this plus sign here, we're actually squaring the entire quantity. And so it's x plus 1 times x plus 1. So I'm going to leave the left side alone and just expand the right side by using the FOIL method or the distributive property. So x times x gives me x squared. X times 1 gives me x, 1 times x gives me x, and then 1 times 1 gives me 1. So on the left, I now have 3x plus 7, and on the right, I have x squared plus 2x plus 1. And so again, this is just an equation that it's a quadratic, and typically when we solve quadratics, you want to move everything to one side so that you have 0 on the other side. So here I'm going to add 3x to both sides. That gives me x squared. 3x plus 2x is going to give me 5x plus 1. And then subtract 7 from both sides. Gives me x squared plus 5x minus 6. So 1 minus 7 gives me negative 6. Okay. And so now we have a quadratic, and the nice thing about this quadratic is that there's no coefficient for x, so of course I'm going to try and factor this first. X, okay? And if you're good at factoring already, you can just write in the numbers. I'm just going to demonstrate here the diamond method. Okay, so we put a times c at the top, so this gives me a negative 6. B at the bottom, so that's 5. And we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to positive 5. And that's going to be 1 and 6. And actually negative 1, because when we multiply these two, it's got to give us negative 6. We add them, it gives us positive 5. So it's x minus 1, x plus 6. And we're going to use the zero product property. And that just says that if you have two quantities that have a product of 0, you can set each one of them to 0. So 0 equals x minus 1. That means 1 equals x. 0 equals x plus 6. Subtract 6 from both sides, you get negative 6 equals x. Okay? And there you have it, the two solutions for this problem. And now, just to backtrack a little bit here, the key here isn't so much solving the quadratic, because we already worked on this, but the idea is how do we get to that point where we get a quadratic. And when we start out here, we have an equation that has a square root in it, okay, and it looks a little bit complicated, but the trick there, again, the key is just to square both sides so we can undo the square root. And when we square both sides, we end up with a quadratic problem.